My name is Camden, and at 32 years old, I thought I had finally escaped the financial chaos of my childhood. Growing up with divorced parents, I lived with Mom while Dad vanished to the other side of the country. My sister Natalie was always the golden child, getting everything while I worked for scraps. After years of hard work, I built a successful career in software engineering and even set up a joint account with Mom for her emergencies. Never did I imagine she would empty $50,000 from that account to fund my entitled sister's lavish wedding. If you've ever had your trust betrayed by family, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you believe family should respect boundaries. Now let me tell you how this mess unfolded. I grew up in a quiet middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where most families had 2 parents, 2 kids, and a dog. My family started that way too, until everything fell apart when I was 8 years old. That was when my dad announced he was leaving, packed his bags, and moved to California. He said he needed space, but what he really needed was freedom from responsibility. Within months, he had a new family, and barely remembered to call on birthdays. Mom was left to raise 2 kids on her own, working as an administrative assistant at a local insurance company. The salary wasn't great, and suddenly our comfortable middle-class existence became a daily struggle to make ends meet. I remember the night I found Mom at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, quietly crying as she tried to figure out how to keep the lights on and still buy groceries. That night changed me. At just 9 years old, I started taking responsibility. I got up early on weekends to deliver papers in our neighborhood. During summers, I mowed lawns for $5 a yard. By 12, I was babysitting, walking dogs, and doing any odd job I could find. Every dollar I earned went into a jar labeled family fund that I proudly presented to Mom each month. Natalie, my sister who is 3 years younger than me, had a completely different childhood experience. While I was working before and after school, she was joining dance classes, going to sleepovers, and getting new clothes whenever she wanted. Mom always had money for Natalie's activities, but never for mine. Whenever I questioned this obvious favoritism, Mom had the same answer. Your sister needs more support. You're naturally more independent, Camden. This message was repeated so often that I eventually accepted it as truth. I was the strong one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything. Throughout high school, I worked 20 hours a week at the local grocery store, while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I was determined to get a scholarship to college because I knew Mom wouldn't be able to help much financially, especially with Natalie's expensive tastes growing more extravagant by the day. My sister had developed a sense of entitlement that was staggering. By 16, she expected a new phone every year, designer clothes, and expensive birthday parties that Mom somehow always managed to provide. I managed to secure a partial scholarship to Michigan State University, but it only covered about half the tuition. I paid the rest by working 30 hours a week at a campus cafeteria and taking out minimal student loans. I chose to major in computer science because I researched which careers would provide financial stability, something I desperately craved after years of uncertainty. Meanwhile, Natalie dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it was too stressful, and moved back home with Mom, who welcomed her with open arms. This pattern continued throughout her 20s, starting jobs and quitting when they became difficult, moving in with boyfriends until they got tired of supporting her, then returning to Mom's apartment where she always had a safety net. After graduating, I landed a job at a small tech startup in Chicago. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but I worked 80-hour weeks to prove myself, climbing from junior developer to senior software engineer in just 5 years. By my 30th birthday, I was earning 6 figures and had finally built the financial security I dreamed of since childhood. The first thing I did with my new financial freedom was help Mom move into a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Her old place had mold problems and unreliable heating, issues she had tolerated for years because she couldn't afford to move. I helped her find a nice 2-bedroom place, paid the security deposit, and covered the difference in rent between her old and new apartments. I wanted to take care of the person who had sacrificed so much for us, even if her parenting hadn't always been fair. About 2 years ago, I set up a joint savings account with Mom and deposited $50,000 into it. I was very clear about its purpose when I gave her the debit card. This is for your emergencies only, Mom, I explained firmly. Medical bills, car repairs, home issues, things you need. Not for Natalie, not for anyone else. She had hugged me tightly and promised, with tears in her eyes, I would never abuse your trust, Camden. This means the world to me. I checked the account occasionally. Pleased to see she rarely touched it except for a couple of legitimate emergencies, like when her car needed a new transmission or when she needed dental work that wasn't covered by insurance. Each time, she called me first to discuss the expense, which reinforced my trust in her responsibility with the money. By this point, Natalie was 30 years old, but still living like a teenager. She cycled through retail jobs, always quitting because managers didn't appreciate her, and boyfriends who initially seemed wealthy but eventually grew tired of her spending habits. Despite having no stable income, she somehow always had the latest iPhone, designer purses, and a busy social calendar. I suspected Mom was still subsidizing her lifestyle, but I kept my distance from Natalie's financial disasters. Our relationship was strained but civil. We exchanged birthday and Christmas gifts, showed up at the same family gatherings, and made small talk about superficial topics. I avoided discussing money or career with her, as those conversations inevitably led to her complaints about how unfair life was or thinly veiled requests for loans that were never repaid. I had built a good life for myself. A comfortable downtown apartment, a solid career, good friends, and the financial stability I had worked so hard to achieve. Little did I know that my carefully constructed sense of security was about to be shattered by the two people I should have been able to trust the most. Last spring, Natalie called excitedly to announce her engagement to her boyfriend of 8 months, James. From the few times I had met him, James presented himself as a successful investment consultant with a knack for closing big deals. He drove a luxury car, wore expensive watches, and talked constantly about his important clients. Something about him always seemed off to me. The way his stories slightly changed each time he told them, how vague he was about where he worked, the way he avoided specific questions about his business. But Natalie was completely smitten, believing she had finally found her ticket to the lifestyle she felt she deserved. Mom organized a family dinner to celebrate the engagement, inviting a few relatives from her side of the family. When I arrived at her apartment, I was surprised to see it transformed with expensive champagne, gourmet catering, and even fresh flower arrangements. This was far beyond Mom's typical budget and immediately raised concerns about where the money was coming from. During dinner, Natalie couldn't stop talking about her wedding plans. "We're looking at the Grand Plaza Hotel for the venue," she announced, referencing one of the most expensive wedding venues in Chicago. "Their platinum package is just perfect, and we want to have at least 200 guests. I nearly choked on my drink. The Grand Plaza's platinum package started at $50,000 for just the basics. With 200 guests, they were looking at well over $70,000 for the venue alone. That sounds expensive, I said carefully. Have you set a budget yet? James wrapped his arm around Natalie and smiled confidently. When you find the perfect woman, you spare no expense. My year-end bonus should cover most of it. This raised another red flag. Earlier that evening, he had mentioned being between major clients and having a temporary cash flow situation. His stories weren't adding up. Mom beamed proudly. Nothing but the best for my baby girl. Oh, Camden, you should see the wedding dress she's found. It's absolutely stunning. The next day, Mom insisted I join them for dress shopping. Against my better judgment, I agreed, hoping to gain more clarity about how they were planning to finance this increasingly elaborate event. At the bridal boutique, Natalie tried on dress after dress, dismissing anything under $5,000 as too basic. She eventually settled on a $15,000 designer gown that made Mom tear up with joy. As the saleswoman wrote up the order, I noticed Mom's credit card being declined. She looked embarrassed, fumbling through her purse for another card. That's when the first direct hint came. Camden, can I talk to you privately for a moment? Mom asked, pulling me aside. I was wondering if you might help with some of the wedding costs. Just as a gift to your sister. You know how special this day is for her. I took a deep breath before responding. Mom, I'm happy to give Natalie a reasonable wedding gift, but I'm not comfortable funding an entire extravagant wedding. This is way beyond a reasonable budget. Mom's expression hardened slightly. You have so much money now, Camden. Would it really hurt you to share some of your success with your family? After all we've been through together? We've discussed this, I reminded her. My financial situation is the result of years of hard work and careful planning. I'm not opposed to helping family, but this is turning into a financial fantasy that nobody can actually afford. The conversation was interrupted when Natalie came out of the dressing room. Sensing tension, she immediately asked what was wrong. When Mom reluctantly explained that I wasn't willing to help out with wedding costs, Natalie's reaction was immediate and dramatic. "You never support anything in my life," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "You've always been jealous of me. This is the most important day of my life, and you're ruining it because you're selfish with your money." The boutique employees awkwardly pretended to be busy as Natalie continued her tantrum. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I would give her a generous gift, but couldn't fund an entire wedding that even wealthy families would find excessive. This only made her cry harder. Mom pulled me aside again, her voice low and sharp. "She's your sister, Camden. Family takes care of family. You're being selfish with your money when you could easily help make her dreams come true." I stood firm despite the emotional manipulation. This isn't about being selfish. It's about reasonable expectations and living within our means. James is supposedly wealthy. Why isn't he covering these costs? The answer came a week later when Mom called to tell me there was an issue with the venue deposit. James's credit card had been mysteriously declined, and they needed to secure the date quickly before losing it. Once again, the conversation turned to my financial assistance, and once again I refused. I left that dinner early after another heated argument about money and familial obligation. As I drove home, my phone kept buzzing with texts from Mom alternating between guilt trips and apologies. What struck me as odd in the following days were calls from various wedding vendors asking for payment confirmation. Somehow, my phone number had been given as a contact for billing questions. When I tried to call Mom to ask about this, she didn't pick up for days. My text messages were met with vague responses about being too busy with wedding plans to talk. A deep sense of unease began to grow. Something wasn't right. My best friend Alex listened patiently as I explained the situation over beers at our favorite local pub. "Dude, something sketchy is definitely going on," he said after hearing all the details. "The way they're avoiding your questions about money while simultaneously trying to get you to pay for everything? Check your accounts, man. Seriously." I laughed off his concern. Mom would never go behind my back like that. She knows how hard I've worked for my money. Besides, she doesn't have access to anything except that emergency account, and she's always been responsible with that. Alex didn't look convinced. "Just check it. For my peace of mind, if not yours." I didn't know it then, but that conversation would be the last moment of financial innocence I would have for a long time. The betrayal, waiting to be discovered, would shake the very foundation of my relationship with my family and force me to confront painful truths I had been avoiding for years. The following Monday, I was reviewing my monthly budget as part of my regular financial routine. I had always been meticulous about tracking my money, a habit born from years of financial insecurity during childhood. I logged into my banking portal to check my accounts, scrolling through recent transactions to categorize them correctly in my budgeting software. When I clicked on the joint account I shared with Mom, my blood ran cold. The balance, which should have been close to $50,000, was down to just $782.16. For several seconds, I stared at the screen, convinced I must be looking at the wrong account. I logged out and back in again, but the horrifying numbers remained unchanged. With shaking hands, I pulled up the transaction history. Over the past 2 weeks, there had been a series of large withdrawals. $5,000 to Elegance Catering, $12,000 to Grand Plaza Events, $15,000 to Bridal Dreams Boutique, $8,000 to Luxury Floral Designs, and several other payments to various wedding vendors. Each transaction had been made using the debit card I had given to Mom for emergencies only. My stomach lurched. Nearly $50,000. Money I had worked countless hours to earn, sacrificed vacations and luxuries to save, had been drained without my knowledge or consent to fund Natalie's wedding. The wedding I had explicitly refused to pay for multiple times. I immediately called Mom. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a message that came out more calmly than I felt. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the joint account. Call me back immediately." I then tried Natalie's number with the same result. Unable to sit still, I grabbed my car keys and drove to Mom's apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, I knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. Her car wasn't in its usual spot, which meant she was deliberately avoiding me. My next stop was Natalie's apartment across town. As I pulled into the visitor parking space, I spotted Mom's car. They were both hiding from me. The realization made my chest tighten with anger and betrayal. I pounded on Natalie's door until it finally opened. Mom stood there, her face pale and eyes downcast, unable to meet my gaze. Behind her, Natalie sat on the couch with a wedding planning binder open on her lap, looking more annoyed than remorseful. "Camden," Mom began, her voice small. "I can explain." I pushed past her into the apartment, holding up my phone with the bank statement displayed. "Explain why you stole $50,000 from me after I specifically told you I wouldn't pay for this wedding? Explain how that money set aside for your emergencies is now paying for flower arrangements and catering?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I borrowed it, Camden. I was going to tell you. Natalie's wedding is so important, and James had some unexpected financial issues. I'll pay you back, I promise." "Borrowed?" I repeated incredulously. "You don't borrow $50,000 without asking. That's called stealing, Mom." Natalie stood up, rolling her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. You have plenty of money. It's not like you're going to miss it, with your fancy job and apartment." The casual dismissal of my feelings, and the complete lack of remorse, sent a wave of fury through me. That's not the point. I worked 80-hour weeks for years to save that money. I skipped vacations, lived with roommates until last year, drove a 15-year-old car until it literally stopped running. And you think you're entitled to take it without even asking? Mom stepped between us, always the protector when it came to Natalie. "You owe your family, Camden. After all I did raising you, all the sacrifices I made. This is for your sister's special day. Family supports family. Family doesn't steal from each other," I shot back. "Family respects boundaries. Family asks permission." That's when the full truth came out. James wasn't the successful investment consultant he claimed to be. He had a gambling problem that had left him deeply in debt. The luxury car was leased and about to be repossessed. The fancy watch was a convincing fake. He had promised Natalie a dream wedding he had no means to provide, and rather than accepting reality, Mom had decided to solve the problem by draining my account. "He's getting help for his gambling," Natalie insisted. "And once he's better, his business will pick up again. We'll pay you back eventually." The casualness of "eventually" made me laugh bitterly. "Do you even hear yourselves? You stole my money for a man with a gambling addiction who's been lying about his finances, and you think this is going to end well?" Mom tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Camden, please understand. Natalie has always dreamed of a beautiful wedding. I couldn't bear to see her disappointed. And what about disappointing me? Betraying my trust? Stealing money I worked years to save? Did that factor into your decision at all?" The hurt in my voice was unmistakable. Natalie crossed her arms defensively. "You've always been the golden child with your perfect grades and perfect job. For once, something is about me. Is that so terrible?" I stared at her in disbelief. In her warped perception, I had been the favored child, despite years of evidence to the contrary. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. "This isn't about childhood jealousy, Natalie. This is about $50,000 that was taken from me without permission to fund a wedding for you and a man who has been lying about his entire financial situation. You're just jealous that I found someone who loves me enough to give me a beautiful wedding," she snapped back. "He's not giving you anything." "I am, involuntarily," I shouted, my patience finally breaking. "A man who loves you would be honest about his finances, not expect your family to bankrupt themselves for a one-day event." The argument continued in circles, with Mom trying to mediate while simultaneously defending Natalie's position. The familiar family dynamic was playing out exactly as it had throughout our childhood. Natalie wanting something unreasonable, Mom enabling her, and me expected to sacrifice without complaint. After nearly an hour of getting nowhere, I headed for the door. "I want a full accounting of every penny that was taken, and a plan for how you intend to pay it back. This isn't going away." Mom followed me to the door, grabbing my arm. "Please, Camden. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Everything is booked and paid for. Don't ruin this for your sister." The plea hit me like a physical blow. After everything that had happened, I was still being cast as the villain who might ruin Natalie's special day. Not the mother who stole, not the sister who felt entitled to my money, not the fiancé who lied about his finances. Me, the victim of theft, was somehow the potential problem. I gently removed Mom's hand from my arm. "You ruined this, not me. You ruined my trust in you, and I don't know if I'll ever get that back." As I drove home, the full weight of the betrayal crashed over me. My hands trembled so badly I had to pull over. Tears I had been holding back flooded out as I sat on the shoulder of the highway, engine idling. I hadn't cried since I was a teenager, but now sobs racked my body. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bank statement with those massive withdrawals. I felt physically ill, nauseous, headachy, and exhausted, all at once. The two people I should have been able to trust implicitly had conspired to steal from me, and then acted as if I was overreacting by being upset about it. I called in sick to work the next day, something I never did. I couldn't focus on code or meetings when my personal life was imploding. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying years of family dynamics in my mind, seeing patterns I had been too close to recognize before. The constant sacrifices expected of me, the endless excuses made for Natalie, the emotional manipulation disguised as familial obligation. It wasn't just about the money. It was about a lifetime of having my boundaries ignored and my needs dismissed. As the shock began to fade, a cold determination took its place. I had allowed myself to be taken advantage of for the last time. Now, I needed to take action to protect myself and force my family to face the consequences of their choices. It wouldn't be pretty, but it was necessary, not just for my financial security, but for my self-respect. The morning after discovering the theft, I called my bank and explained the situation. The customer service representative was sympathetic, but delivered disappointing news. Since you willingly added your mother to the account as a joint owner, legally she had the right to withdraw funds, she explained gently. From a banking perspective, this isn't unauthorized use, even if it violated your personal agreement with her. I then called Alex, who happened to be an attorney specializing in family law. He invited me over to discuss my options. You have two basic paths here, Alex explained as we sat at his kitchen table. You could file a police report for theft by deception, which could potentially lead to criminal charges against your mother, or you could try to handle this as a civil matter and seek repayment privately. The thought of my mother facing criminal charges made me physically ill, despite my anger. I don't want to send her to jail, I just want my money back and for them to understand they can't treat me this way. Then let's focus on damage control and recovery, Alex suggested. First, you need to protect whatever assets you still have. Following his advice, I immediately closed the joint account and transferred the remaining $782 to my personal account. I then froze my credit cards and set up fraud alerts on all my accounts. I wasn't sure if Mom had access to any of my other financial information, but I couldn't take any more chances. Next, I opened entirely new accounts at a different bank. I updated all my direct deposits and automatic payments, effectively cutting off any possibility that Mom could access my money again. The process took hours of phone calls and paperwork, but by the end of the day, my finances were secure. As I was going through this financial overhaul, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, calling my dad. Our relationship had been distant since the divorce, limited to occasional holiday calls and birthday texts. But somehow, I needed to talk to someone who understood the family dynamics from a different perspective. Your mother always enabled Natalie's behavior, Dad said after I explained the situation. Even when you were kids, Natalie could do no wrong in her eyes. I tried to balance things out when I was there, but after the divorce, his voice trailed off with regret. I should have fought harder to stay involved in your lives. While his absence wasn't excusable, his insight was valuable. He confirmed patterns I had observed but doubted, validating my feelings in a way I desperately needed. What are you planning to do? He asked. I'm going to demand repayment, I explained. Alex is helping me draft a formal agreement. If they refuse to sign it, then I'll have to consider legal action. That's fair, Dad said. Just remember that money and family are a volatile mix. Whatever happens, don't let this define the rest of your life the way my mistakes defined mine. It was the most fatherly advice he had offered in decades. With Alex's help, I drafted a repayment contract. The terms were straightforward. Mom would repay the full amount of $49,217.84 in monthly installments over 5 years with no interest. The payments would be reasonable given her income, but would require sacrifices on her part. A consequence I felt was appropriate given the circumstances. The contract included clauses about what would happen if she missed payments and a stipulation that I would be entitled to pursue legal action if the agreement was broken. It was formal and binding, transforming an implicit family trust that had been violated into an explicit legal obligation that could be enforced. While working on these practical matters, I was also addressing my emotional health. I started seeing a therapist to help process the betrayal and examine the unhealthy family patterns I had been part of for so long. You've been enabling your family's financial dependence, my therapist pointed out in our first session. By always being the responsible one, the provider, You've made it easy for them to see you as a resource rather than a person with needs and boundaries of your own. It was a painful truth to face. In trying to be the strong one, I had allowed myself to be exploited. The therapy sessions were difficult but clarifying, helping me understand that setting firm boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary for healthy relationships. As the wedding date approached, I prepared myself emotionally for the confrontation that would inevitably occur. I rehearsed what I would say, anticipating the emotional manipulation tactics that would be deployed against me. I needed to stay calm but firm, compassionate but resolute. Alex offered to accompany me for moral support, and I gratefully accepted. Having someone in my corner who understood both the legal and emotional aspects of the situation would help me stay grounded when facing my family. The night before the planned confrontation, I sat in my apartment reviewing the contract one last time. I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger at the betrayal, sadness for the family relationship that might never be the same, but also a growing sense of empowerment. For too long, I had allowed my self-worth to be defined by my utility to my family. Now, I was finally standing up for myself. I slept surprisingly well that night, as if my body recognized that a burden was about to be lifted. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. I was no longer the little boy desperately trying to help keep the family afloat. I was a grown man who deserved respect and honesty from the people claiming to love him. Morning came with a sense of resolve. I dressed carefully in a casual but put-together outfit, jeans and a button-up shirt that conveyed respect for the occasion, without the formality of business attire. This wasn't a business meeting after all. It was a family reckoning that had been years in the making. Alex picked me up at 9, and together we drove to the Grand Plaza Hotel, where preparations for the wedding were underway. Whatever happened next would change my family forever. There was no going back to the dysfunctional patterns of the past. Either we would build something healthier from the ashes of this betrayal, or we would go our separate ways, the ties of obligation finally severed by the very people who had wielded them as weapons for so long. I took a deep breath as we pulled into the hotel parking lot. "I'm ready," I told Alex, and I meant it. The Grand Plaza Hotel lived up to its reputation for luxury. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers in the lobby, and staff in crisp uniforms moved efficiently to prepare for the day's events. Following the signs for the Harris Parker wedding, Alex and I made our way to the event space where final preparations were underway. We found Mom directing a team of florists who were arranging elaborate centerpieces for the reception tables. She was so absorbed in instructing them about the exact placement of orchids that she didn't notice us at first. When she finally looked up and saw me, her face went through a rapid succession of emotions: surprise, guilt, and then defensive anger. "Camden, what are you doing here? The wedding isn't until tomorrow." Her eyes darted to Alex, whom she had met at previous family gatherings. "Why did you bring him?" "We need to talk," I said firmly. "Privately." Mom glanced nervously at the florists. "I'm very busy right now. These arrangements need to be perfect for your sister." "This can't wait," I insisted. "Where's Natalie?" Mom sighed dramatically. "She's in the bridal suite doing a final fitting with the seamstress. Please, Camden, don't upset her today. Whatever this is about can surely wait until after the wedding." "It's about the $50,000 you took from me," I replied, keeping my voice low but firm. "So no, it can't wait." The color drained from Mom's face. She quickly dismissed the florists, asking them to take a coffee break. Once they had left, she turned to me with pleading eyes. "Camden, please. I know you're upset, but this is your sister's special time. I promise we'll sort everything out after the wedding." Alex stepped forward. "Mrs. Harris, I'm here as Camden's friend and also as his attorney. The situation is quite serious, and we believe it needs immediate attention." Mom's expression hardened at the mention of attorney. "You brought a lawyer to your sister's wedding? How could you do this to the family?" Before I could respond, a hotel staff member approached Mom with a worried expression. "Mrs. Harris, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there seems to be an issue with the credit card on file for the additional services you ordered this morning. It's been declined." Mom fumbled in her purse. "Let me try another card. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," I said after the staff member left to try the new card. "I froze all my credit cards and closed our joint account. The stealing stops now." Mom's face crumpled. "How could you do this? Today of all days." "How could I do this?" I repeated incredulously. "How could you steal $50,000 from me after I explicitly said I wouldn't fund this wedding?" How could you put deposits down with vendors using my money without my knowledge or consent? The better question is, how could you do this to ME? We were interrupted by the staff member returning, looking even more uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harris, but the second card has also been declined. We cannot proceed with the additional services without payment. Mom looked panicked. Please, just bill it to the room for now. My daughter's fiancé will take care of it when he arrives. The staff member shook his head. I'm afraid the room charges have already exceeded the pre-authorization limit. We need payment immediately, or we'll have to cancel the additional services. What additional services? I asked, turning to Mom. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Just a few last-minute additions. A champagne fountain, an ice sculpture, upgraded linens. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even after draining my account and being caught, she was still trying to add more expensive elements to this already excessive wedding. We need to talk to Natalie, I insisted. All of us, right now. Mom tried to protest, but the hotel staff member interjected, Mrs. Harris, I hate to pressure you, but we really do need to resolve this payment issue immediately. The venue manager is asking to speak with you. Trapped, Mom finally agreed to lead us to the bridal suite. As we walked, the venue manager joined us, a tablet in hand showing outstanding balances that needed immediate payment. The total made my head spin. Another $15,000 in upgrades had been added just in the past 24 hours. Natalie was standing on a pedestal in her wedding gown, a seamstress kneeling at her feet making last-minute adjustments. When she saw us enter, her expression shifted from bridal bliss to irritation. What's he doing here? She demanded, glaring at me. Mom, I told you I didn't want him around until the ceremony. Miss Harris, the venue manager interjected before Mom could respond. We need to discuss the payment issues immediately. Several of your vendors are threatening to withdraw their services without payment confirmation. Natalie stepped down from the pedestal, careful of her dress. What payment issues? Everything's been taken care of. The manager looked uncomfortable. The credit cards on file have been declined, and we're now nearly $15,000 short for the services requested. Natalie's eyes shot daggers at me. What did you do? I protected what's left of my money, I answered calmly. The $50,000 that was already taken is gone, but I'm not allowing any more theft. Theft? Natalie scoffed. It's not theft when family helps family. You're just being selfish and trying to ruin my wedding because you're jealous. The seamstress quietly gathered her things and slipped out of the room, clearly wanting no part of the family drama unfolding. The venue manager looked like he wanted to follow her example but remained professionally rooted in place. Where's James? I asked, looking around the suite. Shouldn't he be dealing with these payment issues? Natalie and Mom exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Finally, Mom said, He's running a bit late. He had some business to take care of this morning. Call him, I insisted. Right now. Natalie reluctantly pulled out her phone and dialed. After several rings, it went to voicemail. She tried again with the same result. Her confident facade began to crack slightly. Just then, there was a knock at the door. The venue manager opened it to reveal a disheveled James, looking nothing like the polished professional he usually presented himself as. His eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit wrinkled. James! Natalie rushed to him. Where have you been? The venue manager says there are payment problems. James looked around the room, taking in all the players in this drama. Natalie in her wedding gown, Mom wringing her hands anxiously, me standing firm with Alex beside me, and the venue manager clutching his tablet of unpaid balances. The weight of reality seemed to hit him all at once. I can't do this anymore, he said, his voice breaking. I've been at the casino all night trying to win enough to cover the wedding costs. I lost everything, including the money for our honeymoon. The room went silent. Natalie stared at James in horror. What are you talking about? You said the wedding was covered. You said your bonus would pay for everything. James laughed bitterly. There is no bonus. There barely is a job. I've been gambling away every paycheck for the past year, borrowing from loan sharks to keep up appearances. He turned to me. I never asked them to take money from you. I thought your mom was helping from her own savings. I believed him. The shame in his eyes was too raw to be fabricated. He truly hadn't known the source of the money, though that hardly absolved him of his role in this disaster. The venue manager cleared his throat. I apologize, but we need a resolution to this payment issue immediately. Without payment, we cannot proceed with tomorrow's event as planned. Mom rushed to me, grabbing my hands. Camden, please. Just until after the wedding, Unfreeze your accounts just for today. I'll pay you back every penny, I promise. Don't let your sister's special day be ruined. It was the same manipulation tactic she had used my entire life, but this time I was prepared for it. I gently removed my hands from hers. I've brought a repayment agreement, I said, nodding to Alex, who produced the document from his briefcase. If you sign this, committing to repay what you've already taken, we can discuss a reasonable compromise for tomorrow's event. Natalie stormed over, still in her wedding gown. A repayment agreement? You're treating your own mother like a criminal. This is my wedding day. Actually, your wedding is tomorrow, Alex pointed out calmly. And yes, taking $50,000 without permission is a criminal act, regardless of family relationships. Camden is being extremely generous by not pressing charges. Natalie turned to James, expecting him to defend her, but he had sunk into a chair, head in his hands. I'm sorry, Nat. I've ruined everything. I need help. For my gambling. I can't keep living this lie. Mom took the contract from Alex with shaking hands, skimming its contents. 5 years of payments? Camden, this will take everything I have. Taking my money without permission took everything I had, I replied. The terms are fair, no interest, reasonable monthly payments. The venue manager, who had been trying to remain professional throughout this family meltdown, spoke up again. I hate to interrupt, but we need a decision about tomorrow's event. Without payment, we'll have to cancel. Sign the agreement, I said to Mom, and I'll help fund a reasonable ceremony. Not this extravaganza, but something nice that won't leave everyone in financial ruin. Reasonable? Natalie spat. What does that mean? Some pathetic backyard wedding with grocery store cake? It means a wedding you can actually afford, I answered. Something meaningful without the excessive price tag. Most of the deposits are non-refundable at this point, so you've already lost that money. But we can scale back the extras and create something beautiful within a realistic budget. Mom looked between Natalie's furious face and my resolute one. For perhaps the first time, she couldn't automatically side with Natalie without serious consequences. She was being forced to make a real choice. I'll sign it, she finally said, her voice small. Mom, Natalie screeched. You can't be serious. This is my dream wedding. It's a dream we can't afford, sweetheart, Mom replied, a new note of realism in her voice. Camden is right. We took his money without permission. That was wrong. As Mom signed the repayment agreement, family members began arriving at the hotel for the rehearsal dinner scheduled for that evening. Word quickly spread that there were issues with the wedding, and soon the bridal suite was crowded with aunts, uncles, and cousins, all offering opinions and taking sides in the conflict. Some supported me once they understood what had happened. I can't believe you stole from your own son, Linda, my Aunt Carol scolded Mom. Others defended Natalie's right to a dream wedding regardless of who paid for it. Through it all, I maintained my position. I would help fund a reasonable, scaled-back ceremony if the repayment agreement was honored. Otherwise, I would pursue legal action to recover my stolen funds. James's parents arrived and were horrified to learn of their son's gambling addiction and the financial chaos it had caused. They pulled James aside for a long, intense conversation that ended with him agreeing to enter a treatment program immediately after the wedding, assuming there still was going to be a wedding. By evening, a compromise had been painfully reached. The wedding would proceed, but with significant modifications. The guest list was cut in half. The 7-course dinner became a simpler 3-course meal. The 12-piece band was canceled in favor of a DJ. The ice sculpture, champagne fountain, and other last-minute additions were eliminated entirely. Natalie cried and raged throughout the negotiations, but with James now admitting his financial problems and Mom acknowledging the theft, her position was untenable. Reality had finally broken through her sense of entitlement, though not without a fight. As the revised plans were confirmed with the venue manager, I felt no joy in my victory. There was only exhaustion and a deep sadness for what our family relationships had become. I had stood my ground and protected myself from further financial exploitation, but at a tremendous emotional cost. I left the hotel that evening, declining to attend the rehearsal dinner. I needed space to process everything that had happened and prepare for the wedding the next day. An event that would be very different from what anyone had planned. The wedding took place, though it bore little resemblance to Natalie's original vision. Instead of the Grand Plaza's opulent ballroom, the ceremony and reception were held in the hotel's smaller garden terrace. The 200-person guest list had been cut to 90, with many distant relatives and casual friends receiving last-minute cancellations. I didn't attend the ceremony itself. Despite the financial resolution, the emotional wounds were too fresh. I couldn't bring myself to sit in the audience and pretend to celebrate when all I felt was grief for the trust that had been broken. Instead, I sent a card with a modest but appropriate gift. A set of quality cookware that was on their registry, not the cash they had surely hoped for. The day after the wedding, I asked Mom to meet me at a coffee shop near her apartment. She arrived looking exhausted, the strain of the past few days visible in the new lines on her face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," I said as she slid into the booth across from me. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I'm so ashamed, Camden. I don't know how to face you after what I did." Her candor surprised me. I had expected more justifications or attempts to minimize her actions. This glimpse of genuine remorse cracked my defensive armor slightly. "Why did you do it, Mom?" "Really, I need to understand." She stared into her coffee for a long moment before answering. "I've always felt guilty about your childhood, about how much responsibility you had to take on while Natalie got to just be a kid. I think I've been trying to make it up to her ever since, giving her everything she wants, protecting her from consequences." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "But in trying to make things up to her, I ended up betraying you, the one who least deserved it." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had about the family dynamics that had shaped our relationships. For the first time, Mom was acknowledging the favoritism that had defined my childhood, the very thing she had always denied when I tried to point it out. "Growing up, I always felt like I had to earn your love," I told her quietly, while Natalie got it automatically. "Taking my money without permission was the ultimate confirmation of what I've always suspected, that my value to this family is what I can provide, not who I am." Mom reached across the table to take my hand. This time, I didn't pull away. "That's not true, Camden. I love you for exactly who you are. I made a terrible mistake because I'm weak when it comes to Natalie's demands. But never think for a moment that my love for you is conditional on what you provide." We talked for hours, unraveling decades of family patterns. It wasn't a magical fix. Trust, once broken, takes tremendous time and effort to rebuild. But it was a beginning, a foundation of honesty, upon which we might eventually construct a healthier relationship. The first repayment check arrived exactly on schedule the following week. It wasn't much, just a few $100s, but the consistency of it meant more than the amount. It was a tangible acknowledgement of the wrong that had been done and a commitment to making it right. Meanwhile, Natalie and James had moved in with his parents after returning from a significantly downsized honeymoon. James had entered an outpatient treatment program for his gambling addiction, and through that process, even more financial secrets had come to light. His debts were substantially larger than anyone had realized, including credit cards in Natalie's name that she hadn't known about. For the first month after the wedding, Natalie refused to speak to me. She sent anonymous text messages from burner phones, calling me selfish and accusing me of ruining her special day. I blocked each number as it came, refusing to engage with the emotional manipulation. The extended family was split in their reactions. Some relatives understood my position and supported my boundaries. "It's about time someone in this family stood up to Natalie," my cousin Michael told me over lunch. "She's been getting away with this princess behavior for way too long." Others took Natalie's side, arguing that family should help family without conditions or expectations of repayment. These were generally the same relatives who had themselves been financially bailed out by others multiple times, a pattern I was only now beginning to recognize throughout our extended family system. The first major test came at Thanksgiving, traditionally held at Mom's apartment. I debated not attending, still raw from the wedding drama, but ultimately decided to go. Avoiding family gatherings would only allow resentments to fester without resolution. When I arrived, the tension was palpable. Natalie and James were there, seated as far from my assigned place as the table allowed. Some relatives greeted me warmly, while others were noticeably cool. Mom moved between factions, trying desperately to maintain a facade of family harmony. During dinner, Uncle Pete, always one to avoid subtlety, brought up the elephant in the room. "So are we all just pretending the wedding drama didn't happen? Or can we talk about it like adults?" The table went silent. All eyes moved between Natalie and me, waiting for the explosion. "I think some things are better discussed privately," I said carefully. "Why?" Natalie snapped. "You had no problem humiliating me publicly at my wedding. Why start being discreet now?" "I didn't humiliate you," I replied, keeping my voice calm. I protected myself from having any more money taken without my consent. There's a difference. Family helps family, Aunt Deborah chimed in. Your sister only gets married once. Hopefully, someone muttered, earning sharp looks from several relatives. I agree that family helps family, I said. But help should be requested, not taken. And it should be given freely, not extracted through manipulation or theft. The conversation devolved from there, with family members taking sides and revisiting arguments from the wedding. Old grievances unrelated to the current situation were dredged up. At one point, Grandma Elaine stood up and announced, I didn't live 82 years to listen to this nonsense at Thanksgiving, before retreating to watch football in the living room. Through it all, I maintained my position calmly but firmly. Yes, I loved my family. Yes, I was willing to help when I could. No, that did not mean they were entitled to take my money without permission. No, standing up for myself did not make me selfish or uncaring. By the end of the evening, no consensus had been reached, but something important had shifted. For the first time, I had articulated my boundaries in front of the entire family and stood by them despite pressure. And though some disagreed with me, I had forced a conversation about financial boundaries and respect that this family had avoided for generations. Over the following months, the repayment checks from Mom continued to arrive consistently. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, meeting for coffee every other week to talk honestly about our family patterns. Sometimes these conversations were painful, but they were always productive. Surprisingly, my relationship with Dad also improved during this period. Our conversation during the crisis had opened a door that had been closed for decades. We began talking regularly, and he even visited Chicago for a weekend. During his visit, he apologized properly for his absence during my childhood, something I had needed to hear for a very long time. I always knew you'd be okay because you were so capable, he admitted during a walk along Lake Michigan. But that's no excuse for not being there. Capable kids need parents too. It was 6 months after the wedding when I received an unexpected call from Natalie. I almost didn't answer, expecting another tirade, but curiosity won out. James moved out, she said, without preamble. He relapsed on his gambling and lost his job. When his parents found out, they kicked us both out. I'm staying with a friend right now. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. There was a long pause before she continued. You were right about him, about the wedding, about everything. I was so caught up in this fantasy of what my life should look like that I couldn't see what was really happening. It wasn't quite an apology, but coming from Natalie, this admission was unprecedented. For the first time in our adult lives, she was taking responsibility rather than blaming others for her circumstances. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. I'm looking for a job. A real one, not just something to pay for shopping until I found a rich husband. She laughed bitterly. That plan didn't work out so well. The call ended without any dramatic reconciliation, but it was a beginning. A small crack in the wall of resentment and entitlement that had defined our relationship for so long. Life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. I started dating someone who, upon hearing the family saga, asked insightful questions about boundaries rather than judging anyone involved. Her perspective was refreshing and helped me see the situation with new eyes. Your mom and sister did something really wrong, she said one evening. But they're also products of patterns they didn't create. Breaking those patterns is incredibly hard work, and it sounds like they're at least trying now. Her compassion helped me find my own. Not to excuse what had happened, but to understand it as part of a larger system of dysfunction that had been passed down through generations of our family. The theft of my money had simply been the breaking point that forced these patterns into the light where they could finally be addressed. 6 months after the wedding that nearly tore our family apart, I sat on my balcony watching the Chicago sunset, reflecting on how much had changed. The family dynamics that once seemed immutable had shifted in ways I never could have predicted. Mom had not missed a single repayment. Each month the check arrived exactly on schedule, sometimes with a brief note of gratitude for my patience or an update on her life. She had taken on extra administrative work to help meet the obligation, and never once complained about the financial strain. This consistency spoke volumes about her commitment to rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. Through weekly therapy sessions, I had been processing the complex emotions surrounding the betrayal. My therapist helped me understand that forgiveness didn't mean pretending the theft never happened, or allowing myself to be vulnerable to similar exploitation in the future. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, she explained. It's about releasing the corrosive anger that harms you more than anyone else. It doesn't mean removing appropriate boundaries. This perspective helped me separate forgiving my family from enabling harmful patterns. I could have compassion for Mom and Natalie without making myself available for further financial or emotional exploitation. This distinction had eluded me for most of my life, as I had equated love with sacrifice and boundaries with selfishness. The most surprising development came from Natalie. Her marriage to James had officially ended after just 4 months, when additional financial deceptions came to light. He had taken out loans in her name without her knowledge, leaving her with debt that would take years to repay. The fantasy of marrying into wealth had crumbled in the face of harsh reality. Rather than returning to Mom's apartment and falling back into old patterns of dependence, Natalie had gotten a job as an administrative assistant at a local company and rented a small studio apartment she could actually afford. It wasn't glamorous, but it was sustainable. Perhaps the first truly independent choice she had made in her adult life. One evening, I received an unexpected call from her. "Can we meet for coffee?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual demanding tone. "There are things I need to say to you in person." We met at a small cafe halfway between our apartments. Natalie arrived in simple jeans and a sweater, a far cry from the designer outfits she had once considered essential. The change wasn't just external, there was a new humility in her eyes that I had never seen before. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began after we'd ordered. "About the wedding, about growing up, about the way I've treated you." She took a deep breath. "You were right about James. You tried to warn me, and I refused to listen because I wanted so badly to believe in the fantasy." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "But it goes deeper than that," she admitted. "I've spent my whole life expecting things to be handed to me, while you worked for everything you have. When Mom took your money, I justified it because I truly believed I deserved a perfect wedding, regardless of who paid for it." She looked down at her coffee. "I was wrong, Camden. I'm sorry." The apology I had never expected to hear from my sister left me momentarily speechless. "Thank you for saying that," I finally managed. "It means a lot." "I'm trying to change," she continued. "It's hard. I still catch myself expecting bailouts or special treatment. But I'm working on it." That conversation marked the beginning of a different kind of relationship between us. Not instantly close or trusting, too much had happened for that, but honest in a way we had never been before. We began meeting monthly for dinner, gradually rebuilding a connection based on who we actually were rather than the roles we had played in our family system. My relationship with Mom also continued to evolve. During one of our coffee meetings, she shared something I had long suspected but never heard her acknowledge. "I favored Natalie because she reminded me of myself," Mom confessed. "I saw all my insecurities and weaknesses in her, and I thought I could protect her from experiencing the struggles I went through." She reached for my hand across the table. "But you reminded me of my father. Strong, independent, capable. I told myself you didn't need the same support because you would always find a way to succeed." "I did need you," I said quietly. "Not to solve my problems, but to see me, to value me for who I was, not just what I could provide." "I know that now," she replied, tears in her eyes. "And I'm so sorry it took something this drastic for me to understand." These conversations weren't always easy, but they were healing. Slowly, we were creating a new family narrative, one based on truth rather than the comfortable lies and roles that had defined us for decades. My reconnection with Dad proved to be another unexpected positive outcome of the wedding disaster. After our initial conversation during the crisis, we had continued talking regularly. He visited Chicago again, and I even flew to California to see his life there. We would never recover the father-son relationship we should have had during my childhood, but we were building something meaningful as adults. "I failed you as a father," he acknowledged during my visit. "I told myself you were better off without me because of the tension with your mother, but the truth is I was being selfish. I wanted a fresh start without the responsibilities of my first family." His honesty was both painful and refreshing. Like the conversations with Mom and Natalie, it brought long hidden truths into the light where they could finally be addressed. As I navigated these evolving family relationships, I was also developing a promising romantic relationship. Sarah was kind, intelligent, and, most importantly, respectful of boundaries. Early in our dating, I shared the full story of the wedding disaster and the family dynamics that had led to it. "That must have been incredibly painful," she said, her empathy evident. "How are you handling the ongoing repayment situation?" Her question focused on my well-being rather than judging my family's actions. It was indicative of the emotional intelligence that made her different from anyone I had dated before. When our relationship became serious enough to discuss a future together, I was direct about my financial boundaries. I've learned that I need complete transparency and separate accounts in any partnership. It's not about trust, it's about clarity and mutual respect. Sarah understood immediately. That makes perfect sense. Financial boundaries don't mean we can't support each other, they just ensure we do it consciously, and by choice, not by default or obligation. Her response confirmed what I had come to believe through this difficult journey: that real love respects boundaries rather than seeing them as obstacles to overcome or ignore. The family crisis had revealed something profound about the nature of money in relationships. Money isn't just a resource, it's a mirror that reflects our deepest values and assumptions. The way we handle financial matters reveals truths about how we view ourselves and others, truths we might otherwise never acknowledge. For too long, I had allowed my financial success to be weaponized against me, transformed into an obligation rather than an achievement. Breaking that pattern required not just standing firm against the immediate theft, but recognizing and addressing the deeper dynamics that had made such a betrayal possible in the first place. Now, a year after discovering the emptied account, I look at my family with clearer eyes. I see them not as villains who deliberately set out to hurt me, but as flawed people caught in generational patterns they didn't fully understand. That perspective allows for compassion without compromising the boundaries that protect my well-being. I've learned that forgiveness is not a single act, but an ongoing process. Some days I still feel the sharp sting of betrayal when I think about what happened. Other days, I feel genuine appreciation for the growth this crisis ultimately triggered in all of us. Both reactions are valid parts of a healing journey that continues to unfold. The weekly therapy sessions have helped me recognize that standing up for myself isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. True connection can't exist without honest boundaries. By finally establishing those boundaries, I've actually created the possibility for deeper, more meaningful family relationships than we ever had before. Mom continues her monthly payments, now supplemented by occasional contributions from Natalie, who insisted on helping with the debt despite my assurances that the responsibility was Mom's alone. These payments represent more than financial restitution. They're tangible acknowledgments of my worth and agency, affirmations that my boundaries deserve respect. The wedding that was meant to be a single day of celebration ended up transforming our family forever. Not in the way anyone expected, but perhaps in the way we needed. From the ashes of betrayal and entitlement, we're building something new. A family foundation based on honesty, respect, and the recognition that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's simply another form of exploitation. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who felt entitled to your resources? Let me know in the comments how you handled that situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences about navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you someone worthy of respect. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to the healthiest relationships.